So I have been. I've had got a lot of clocks that I've worked on. Most of them are larger spring wound clocks, and well, due to lack of space, I decided to start working on alarms. And I got a couple in the other room that are working. Some are electric, some are spring wound. But I thought I'd try something besides West clocks. Now the West clocks are really well made, and they were high-end clocks. And when it looks to me, they had really fine movements, well made, complex. A lot of them were complex. But then there were lesser companies, and I would consider this clock from one of those sort of companies, Ingraham Sessions and other clock makers that survived the Depression and things like that by selling these what I call tin can clocks. They're just basically a metal can, almost the shape of a sardine can or a small can that you buy at the grocery store, and internally they were made as simply and cheaply as possible to save money and and yet have a practically working clock. So they sold pretty well because people needed to get to work, and time was of essence and still is. But at any rate, so you can see the little bell at the bottom, and then there's the hammer here. And the chiming mechanism almost echoes the kind of chiming mechanism that you saw in the early kitchen clocks, with the little wheel that came around and hit the lever there and caused the hammer to bang on the little bell at the bottom. Whereas you had a West clock where the whole back of the clock formed a bell, and they were just magnificently made. Very simple. But so these are, I would consider these clocks of interest. They're fun. But I don't see any, I really don't see how anybody could justify spending a lot of money to actually try to rescue one of these from being too far gone. This one ran pretty well. It appears to have a fairly good-looking face. It's called an Ingraham Salute, and it kept good time, but it would just stop randomly. I just happened to notice that the ring here is not real brass. It's just actually painted copper, and it's got some rust, and I'm not going to worry about it. It's going to look like an old clock, which is what it is. So I think I'm going to just do the best I can with this, and we'll see how it comes out. I had it apart once already and oiled it from the back, but I couldn't reach the front, so I decided it stops randomly. So I'm going to take the back off, take the front off. I got the hands off, which I use various tools to carefully remove them without damaging the face. And I'm going to try cleaning and lubricating it from the front this time, but I can't see any reason to go any farther. I think going farther is just going to cause more damage than any good. And I had a German clock here that I tried working on, a little alarm, and it was really non-fixable, so I gave up on that one. But I learned my lesson on that. I don't think I'm going to ever go much farther than this on dismantling them. I'm going to clean the pivots and put it back together again and see what happens. I'll report. All right, I'm going to continue on with the video here. So here's what I do. I usually take some mineral spirits. I take a plastic, comes to a Chinese restaurant, the food comes in. I take all the hard items and place them in the bottom of this dish to keep them losing them, the hands and every parts that come off, screws, everything. And then I put a little bit of mineral spirits in there, which is good for the parts to soak in, and at the same time, I can use a Q-tip, and these Q-tips are dirt cheap, and they make nice little cleaners. And where did I put my little pile of Q-tips? I just keep a pile of clean ones here, and just go around each one of these little shafts in here. And the first thing I did was put a drip of oil on each one. Then I went around with them with the Q-tips. There they are. And just ran around and got the initial dirt off of them, and then oiled it another time. And while I'm working, it just has time to soak and loosen up, continually keep loosening up grime on the shafts. Now, these pivots actually are amazingly good condition. So this leads me to believe that there's something binding in the system, and that all I have to do is locate the spot where it's binding, and it should decide to want to take off and run better. It's kind of like a car that's in good tune. You listen to a car in the old days when I fixed cars for 50 or 60 years. Once a car was in tune, it sounded like it just wanted to run. An engine or a clock in good tune is just gonna, its happy state is a running condition. Now this one, here's where you get the impetus, the power transfer up into the timekeeping, or the power side. Now I can get it to go, and the wheel stops. And it just feels as if there's just not much power getting there. And you can see that if I give it just a little more, it goes. And there could be some dirt in that little bit of the train, but I think there's something binding down in the center of this clock mechanism. It may not be reachable. I might be able to take the back frame off, but the risk there is, number one, the springs have to be let down, and number two, these are set up in a fixed way so that they only go together one way. And the other danger is the escapement wheel. The hairspring on there is come on, focus. I got it wet the other day, and ever since then it has trouble focusing. I was working on something at work, and for some reason it doesn't like to focus anymore. So let me see if this does it. Come on. There it goes. So, yeah, I put that focus area in the middle of the screen. There's a very great danger of damaging that spring if you take it apart, which is attached to the back frame. And right here, I'm going to touch my finger. It's just going to be, you're going to cause more damage than good. So I might try to get a little more extra oil to go down into this thing and hopefully get something in it to separate and be less sticky. And the more it runs, the more it'll probably want to run better. So the idea of the game is to get it to run sustainably for periods of time and just let the oil keep working its way down in. So I'll report back and see if we make any progress. But I don't think it's wise to take these little clocks apart unless you've got oodles of experience and time and maybe spare parts. Remember, I've done continue to oil this thing and clean it and got a lot more dirt out of it. So here's the sum total of the amount of dirt I've gotten out of it so far. And I said something about the escapement wheel, the inaccessibility of it, but I think I've discovered something. That bell is attached to these spreaders, and you can see that on this side there's three fingers projecting outward, and they kind of hug that shaft. Now you rotate this to the other side, and you can see that there's fingers on this side too, but they're oriented differently. Instead of being oriented outwardly they're oriented up. And I'm beginning to think that this bell is removable without taking it apart. I'm going to try it later. As soon as I put this down, you can see quite a bit of dirt right there. And then there's a little resting place. If I get my finger in here, right where I'm putting my finger, you can see the little bent piece that is resting up against that spreader. And up above there, there's two fingers that are pointing upward, and I believe they're bent together a little at the top, so there's some spring tension there, which is, I believe, what is holding that bell in place. The bell itself is held onto the frame that it mounts it with that pair of little fingers that's bent outward. Everything is sheet metal and built a little bit almost one way, but I do believe if this finger here got either bent or maybe it's just spring loaded, that this could be dismounted, the bell could be dismounted, and you could access the escapement wheel, maybe even adjust it by removing the bell by doing something with this, and then it'll rotate outward from the frame and then be removed. So I'm going to try that in a minute, and I'll report. It's impossible for me to do this with just one hand, and I have a central tremor, which makes the clock, which makes my work touchy anyways, and probably makes my videos a little. Okay, I'm getting close. I don't know if you can see it in there, but this lever that is next to my thumbnail here rises up, but it not only goes up, but it's got a little tab that's bent over the top of that spreader, which is actually retaining it. What I'm thinking I might be able to do is bend that outward and get it to rotate and come off. I don't want to bend it too much and then damage it, but these things are not really made to be repaired, so it's a gamble, but I think I'm going to try it anyways. So I managed to get that piece off in that little bit of video that I just showed you, the bell. And I have access to the escape wheel. And I was able to add a little more lubrication to the ends of the escape wheel. Plus, I was able to access the adjustment that's down underneath there, and used a pair of pliers. And definitely you take that wheel and carefully, it takes two hands to do it, to determine the amount of end play, and there was quite a bit. So I was able to turn it just a tiny bit. It doesn't take much of rotation of that adjustment screw. Very little movement of the screw to take up the adjustment and take up some of the slack. Now that indicates to me that the ends of the pins are worn. And the smaller the ends of the pins, of course, the less friction point there is. So one time when this clock was new, there wasn't much contact point, so the amount of friction is very low. And that's the key to having a good working escapement. The purpose of these was to eliminate the pendulum and make the clock run at just about any angle. But they age and they wear, and probably there would be possible to restore it by taking it apart and adding a new tip onto it, polishing it to a new tip, and then reinstalling everything and adjusting the end play. But I don't know, for me that's just beyond the scope of my abilities, and the value of the clock is not that high. If somebody really, this was a rare, expensive clock, I suppose somebody could. Of course, they don't make them anymore. They don't have you can't get parts for them. And another clock off of eBay would probably have a similar wear problem. So I think you could, it's a little bit like doing heart surgery on an old man or an old woman, and you take your risks when you take them apart, and you do the best you can while they're to make adjustments, and hopefully this clock will stay going. I noticed that when I started, it wouldn't run at all on its face, but now it is. And I stood it up and it didn't want to run, but I laid it on its back and then it ran happily. So, you know, whether it's going to ever be a really reliable clock or not, I don't know. But I think I'm ready to put it back together again. And we'll just have to see how it goes. I think that's about as far as I'm going to go with this clock. And the fact that it's running at all right now, I think I'm pretty delighted. So, okay, maybe I'll finish up the video with a final assembly when it's put back together, and I'll show whether it's running. So I actually left the phone on video for a long time. I might not have much data time left, but I'm going to try to show you my method for setting the clock hands on an alarm clock now. Trying to set things at high noon is very easy to do, it seems. But the problem is that the alarm hand is underneath the minute and hour hands, and they're all crowded underneath there. It's hard to make any adjustments. So I think I'm going to try something different. I'm going to set it so alarms at 6:30, which means that the hands are as far away from each other as they will go. So I've set it so that I put the hour and the minute hands at 6:30, and then I turn the alarm setting hand on the knob on the back of the clock, so it went off just as the knob approached 6:30 where the hands were. Then I put the alarm hand on it, put it at 6:30, and I'm going to just leave that, and I don't push them on very hard. They come off very hard. What I'd done is I oiled them when I first took it apart and just let it soak while I was doing other work, and that helped a lot. Using cardboard and screwdrivers, cut in V's, shoved them on there, and then carefully pried it off without damaging the face. So putting the hands on, I've now got it set so that the alarm is at 6:30, and the hands are set so it isn't alarming. The alarm stop is built in. This is a can clock, so the alarm stop is actually built in the lid. It's not built into the movement. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate it around the hour hands, the timekeeping knob on the back, and see if it doesn't make the alarm go off at 6:30. And if it doesn't, I can adjust the minute hand to the correct number of minutes, and then to get the hour hand to be in the correct position. Then I will rotate it up to the hour and then make a minute adjustment with the hour hand to get that so it's pointing correctly, and that should take care of it. So I'm going to put this down and try that. I've got this is that Ingraham Salute, and I put it back together again. And you can hear it's got a nice healthy tick now. And the secret to doing this was getting it clean for one thing, get some oil down into the pivots for another, but the main thing was to get to the escapement wheel and figure out how to adjust the end play on it, and that was in my video. I don't have a lot of technology. When I started doing this, I had my granddaughter helping me making videos, but she's I don't see her much anymore. So I hope she goes on to continue to make videos, and maybe someday I'll have her over here and she can help me make some more videos. But so we kind of do a little stop motion with these, and someday maybe I'll get a holder for, or maybe a different camera, I don't know. But you'll see, you kind of notice my philosophy of repairing clocks is it's more like a physician. They have a code that says do no harm. So sometimes trying to make improvements in a clock can cause more harm than it's worth. Sometimes it's unavoidable. But I think we've made this clock something that can be enjoyed now. It's not new. We don't want it to be new. At least I don't want it to be new. Some people might want to restore clocks that way, but okay. There we go, Mr. Shaky Hands. All right, take care.